I'm Ben, and you're watching Batarang to the Bud. And in case you missed it, a few years ago in 2021, Marvel acquired the rights to publish Predator comics. They revealed this with a pretty cool piece of art by David Finch. Then there was a slight delay before their first Predator comic, but in the meantime, they released a bunch of sick Predator versus variant covers. Check it out. Then they officially kicked off a whole new era of stories starring the Yautja in 2022. Dark Horse had previously held the rights, and they made loads of dope Predator stories, and those stories have lots of fans who were skeptical of Marvel taking over. I too was skeptical, but recently I finally decided to take the plunge. The continuity of the main Predator comics is the same world as the films, so they do not exist within the Marvel Universe continuity. However, the company has also published some crossover comics. Those stories, Predator vs. Wolverine vs. Black Panther and vs. Spider-Man, and Predator Kills the Marvel Universe are one-off, standalone stories existing outside of both continuities, just like the DC crossovers from back in the day. But in this video, I'm focusing on the three main Predator stories that Marvel have published so far, giving you a brief overview of each story as well as my thoughts on them. And so, let's get stuck in. In 2022, we got their first Predator story, which was called Day of the Hunter, written by Ed Brisson and with art by Kev Walker. In this book, a group of Aster industry scientists researching a remote planet for potential human colonization were brutally killed by a predator. However, a young girl named Theta was spared. Now, grown up in the year 2056, Theta scours the galaxy in a barely functional ship, using old, scavenged Predator tech, as well as her own hardened expertise, to track down and kill members of the Yautja species, hoping that one day she will find the specific Predator who murdered her family. The Predator with the missing mandible. That part is admittedly a little bit Princess Bride.
You don't by any chance happen to have 6 fingers on your right hand?
I like the futuristic spacefaring setting, and I like our new protagonist. Theta looks badass wearing the Yautja armour, and her want for revenge is totally understandable. After the trauma and the tragedy that she's experienced, it is easy to see why she dedicated her life to this mission. I appreciate that the overall plot is a bit more complex than your standard Predator hunt. However, I don't want to spoil every aspect of these comics in this video. We encounter several Predators along the way, and we even learned a little bit more about Aster in the final few issues. However, my one complaint is that the gore doesn't really happen until the final issue. I'm not too shallow that all I want is gore, but I do like to see the Yautja fuck shit up. Overall though, this was a great beginning to the Marvel era, and I would definitely recommend checking it out if you're a fan of the franchise. It was definitely cool enough to get me excited for the next series, and speaking of which, it's time to look at the 2023 series, and this story is called The Preserve. Once again written by Ed Brisson, and this time with art by Neto Diaz. This story follows a group of 8 strangers who find themselves suddenly transported to a distant alien planet. Yes, just like in the movie Predators.
This planet is a game preserve, and we're the game.
What's even more curious is that the strangers all seem to have been scooped up from different years. We recently saw in Killer of Killers that the Yautja have been keeping humans in cryosleep, so it's cool to see a bit more of that. Also, 2 of the humans in this story work for OWLF, the Otherworldly Life Forms program, as originally established in Predator 2.
That's right, Lieutenant. Otherworld life forms.
Huh?
A fucking alien.
And then seen again in many of the older Dark Horse comics. And also seen again in The Predator. It isn't long before that plot is folded back into the previous comic's plot, when Theta and Paolo show up. I enjoyed the ending of that previous comic, when Theta completed her mission and finally killed the Predator that killed her parents, but then ultimately decided that she wasn't done, and instead she would continue hunting more Predators. I thought that was pretty badass. I think Theta is pretty cool, and I was happy to see her return. But the rest of this plot just wasn't doing it for me. The arrival of Theta and Paolo immediately implied that the new characters would essentially become cannon fodder, and for the most part, that is exactly what happens. As you can imagine, the whole situation lends itself to a lot of tension amongst the characters, and despite Theta and Paolo trying to help them, there's even a mutiny. Some of the newer characters unfortunately allow one of the Predators to follow them, and so Theta and the newbies are all being hunted. In fact, the last couple of issues give me alien vibes. Once again, I don't want to spoil all of the major beats here, but this one didn't land quite as well for me. Even the name doesn't feel right. They're only on the preserve for half of the comic. In my opinion, the most interesting part was the conclusion, which I will partially spoil here. After surviving the hunt, Theta decides that her efforts to kill the predators could potentially help humanity, so she allows someone to take the research back to Earth. If the OWLF are still a thing, then they could learn from her work. Theta, however, stays the course. She is still going to hunt them down, and now she wants to help free any of the humans that they are keeping in cryosleep too. If you enjoyed the first book like I did, then this is still worth a read. The art is great and the violence is pretty awesome, but I'm hoping that the next book is a bit different. This one felt like a mishmash of ideas that we've already seen before, so I want something new and fresh. And so next up is 2024's Predator: The Last Hunt. The Last Hunt is the third and latest arc in the saga of Theta, once again written by Ed Brisson, and this time featuring art by Francesco Manna. This story picks up several years after the events of the Preserve. Theta is now in her 40s, physically exhausted, and her now decades-long quest for revenge against the Predators is beginning to wear her down. Then, while on the planet Mabu, she and Paolo stumble upon a crashed Predator supply ship, which houses a Yautja stasis farm. These farms are massive secret warehouses where the Predators keep countless human captives frozen in time, waiting to be thawed out and placed in a game preserve for future hunts, as seen in Killer of Killers. Theta and Paolo also discover the still-living human cargo, led by John Schaefer. Now, this is a pretty huge deal because Schaefer is the brother of Dutch, which is Arnold Schwarzenegger's character from the first Predator film, and also he's the star of several previous Dark Horse Predator comics, including the very first one, which I actually own the complete run of. I even own a special anniversary figure that celebrates the initial run. So this definitely made me sit up. I did not expect to see him return in the Marvel continuity. The cover teases that they won't get along, but that doesn't really happen. They gain a healthy respect for one another pretty swiftly. Theta, Paolo, John, and a small team travel to the planet Glenelg to search for other survivors, but unfortunately, it turns out to be a trap laid by a fearsome super predator. The super predator and its hounds laid waste to nearly the whole team, while Theta and Paolo's ship, the Sandpiper, was sabotaged, leaving them with no way out. But together, they face off against the super predator in a brutal fight, which pushes Theta to her limits. She is badly injured and her robotic arm is ripped off, but in the end, she wins out. Anyway, this definitely felt like the conclusion of a trilogy. The stakes have got bigger and bigger, while unfortunately the issue counts have become lesser and lesser. This is the shortest of the trilogy, with only 4 issues, which seems like a shame. I feel like it could have done with at least one more issue to really flesh the story out a bit more. The conclusion is a bit abrupt and also a bit open-ended. Theta, Paolo and John now plan to bring the frozen humans home, and that leaves me wanting more. If they are successful in doing that, what would things look like back on Earth? To have people from throughout time suddenly awakened in modern day, which, need I remind you, is 2068. I also want to know more about John. I love that this comic implies that John's previous Predator encounters are still canon. It means Marvel isn't completely dismissing all of the great Dark Horse Predator runs. Anyway, this was another good run, and I'm so glad that I stuck with these comics. The fact that these characters are still alive makes me think that we will definitely see them again at some point in the future, and I'm looking forward to that. I'm pretty indifferent towards Paolo, but I do dig Theta and I want more of John. These have been the main Predator comics published so far. I did mention that there are some Marvel crossovers, but there is also Predator Black, White and Blood, an anthology series, a one-shot Predator Badlands prequel comic, and in some fairly recent news, a new series called Predator Bloodshed has just been announced for February 2026. So it looks like I will have plenty more Predator comics to discuss in the future. If you want to hear my thoughts on those, be sure to leave a like on this video to let me know you want more, and I would also love to hear your thoughts on these comics. So let's chat about them in the comments.